Hello, I'm Stacy Berger, the President and CEO at the Housing and Community Development Network of New Jersey, and we are thrilled to be releasing this year's Out of Reach report. As many of you know, this is a seminal report that our partner, the National Low Income Housing Coalition, produces every year to gauge how expensive or unaffordable it is for working families, seniors, people with disabilities, and other folks struggling to make ends meet to rent an apartment at fair market rent in our state and around our country. We'll get into the data in a little bit, but suffice it to say, rental housing choices in New Jersey and around the nation continue to be out of reach for too many residents. Here at the network, which is our coalition of 275, maybe more at this point, organizations that are working together to make sure that everyone has a safe, affordable place to call home. We use the Out of Reach report to explain to legislators, public officials, local elected and appointed public officials as well about why it's so important that we address rental housing choices. We know that people deserve and need to have a safe, affordable place to call home. And simply here in New Jersey, there has just not been enough choices for people to make that dream a reality. Everyone deserves to have a safe place to call home because housing is seminal and important to everyone's well-being. We know that across the country, we are seeing rent increase dramatically, and New Jersey is not immune from that problem. We have some of the best renter protections in the country, which is great, but we need to do more to make sure that we have rental assistance and that corporate landlords who are raising rents astronomically and making money hand over fist are supporting our residents who need to find a safe, affordable place to rent in this market. So this report allows us to do a few things. It shows the data both here in New Jersey and around the country, as well as internally in New Jersey, which counties are more expensive and what you need to earn to afford a two-bedroom apartment at fair market rent. Secondly, it allows us to compare and contrast with other states so that we can see how we fare, and we can look at other states' policies and programs for supporting renters and tenants to be sure that we are doing the most that we can and that we're innovating and replicating cutting edge ideas from other places. So when we look at other states that have additional rental assistance programs or other places that have additional diversion or housing counseling opportunities, those are great ideas and great programs that we want to see expanded here in New Jersey. New Jersey is doing a lot of really important work, especially at and with the Department of Community Affairs and the Department of Human Services to help keep people stably and safely housed during and now after the pandemic. We led the country in making sure that people had safe places to live during the COVID-19 crisis. And now that the federal government is no longer providing additional resources, we are going to have an additional need that we must address. As many of you know, we are in the midst of the budget discussions here in New Jersey. We have to have a budget approved by the legislature and signed by the governor by the end of this month, June 30th. And so as we are releasing this data, we want to make sure that our elected officials understand how easy it is for landlords to evict renters and how difficult it is for tenants to get the help and resources that they need. The Department of Community Affairs is doing a great job with their eviction prevention programs, but we need more resources for those kinds of assistance programs at the state level and around our state. We have a lot of members who do housing counseling work, and they are seeing a huge uptick in tenants who need assistance, as well as families facing foreclosure. So one way to really put a pin in the eviction process is to raise the rate that it costs for landlords to evict tenants. Right now, it only costs $50 for a landlord, regardless of the size of the number of apartments they have or manage or their profit margin. It just costs them $50 to kick out a tenant, essentially. And so we need to make sure that we are raising that filing fee, which hasn't been raised in as long as anyone can remember. We know that if we raise it about $100 to $150 from $50, we can potentially cut the number of evictions in half in New Jersey, while we are also raising revenue to support those kinds of programs that help keep people in the home they're in right now. The best way to avoid eviction is to make sure that rents are affordable and that landlords have to negotiate with their tenants and that they can avoid raising the rent more than the cost of living has gone up. And so we are really looking at the legislature during this budget process to address the eviction crisis by raising the eviction filing fee from $50 to $150. That is not a huge burden on profitable landlords. In fact, it seems sort of strange that we haven't looked at that before, but we hope that this data will help spur a discussion with our elected officials about what we can do to make rental homes more affordable and available and stable and secure for the folks who are living there right now. So that's one piece of information that we think is very important that's coming out of this report, is that rents are rising tremendously here in New Jersey and across the country. Even though we do have rent control in some places, we do not have it everywhere. And being able to really look at ways to reduce the rent increases and keep people's homes affordable is essential in this time here in our state. So again, thank you to the National Low Income Housing Coalition and all the tremendous staff there who are working very hard to make sure that we have this information. I'm going to turn this program over now to my colleague Arnold Cohen, our Senior Policy Advisor, to walk us through the data and find out exactly how out of reach rental housing is in the Garden State.
My name is Arnold Cohen. I'm the Senior Policy Advisor for the Housing and Community Development Network of New Jersey. We're here today to unveil the National Income Housing Coalition's Out of Reach report. The Out of Reach report is an annual report that looks at how much money a person needs to earn to be able to afford a modest apartment. The report looks at the latest census data, looks at fair market rents. The fair market rent is the rent that somebody needs to afford a modest apartment, and then tabulates that by county, by state. Looking at the data, New Jersey is the 7th most expensive location in the United States, behind California, Hawaii, Massachusetts, New York, Washington, and the District of Columbia. Here in New Jersey, the fair market rent for a modest 2-bedroom apartment is close to $2,000 a month, or $1,980. In order to afford that rent and be able to pay no more than 30% of your income on housing, somebody would have to make almost $80,000 a year, or over $6,600 a month, to afford that modest 2-bedroom apartment. That translates into what we call the housing wage. The housing wage in New Jersey this year is $38.08 an hour. If we look at the 30 largest occupations here in New Jersey, 22 of them have median wages less than what somebody needs to afford that modest apartment. If we look at teaching assistants, nursing assistants, accounting clerks, home health aides, truck drivers. These are all occupations that we depend upon as residents in order to go about our daily lives, but yet people who are working in these occupations cannot afford a decent place to live. Somebody making minimum wage, $15.13 an hour, would have to work 101 hours a week, or 2.5 full-time jobs to be able to afford that modest 2-bedroom apartment. Something that we all know is impossible. And so what happens is people double up. People live in housing that is inadequate, meaning that it might have vermin or not have heat and hot water as needed. People do what they can do in order to have a home but it'll be less than ideal because of the high cost of housing here in New Jersey. The average renter wage is $23.70 an hour. And even that is $14 an hour less than what's called a housing wage. As we know here in New Jersey, how expensive an apartment is depends upon where you live in the state. Hudson, Middlesex, Somerset, Huntington are the most expensive places to live in New Jersey. But even places in southern New Jersey where apartment costs less, people are earning less. And so places like Cape May and Gloucester are least affordable for a renter. And then the other thing we know is that depending upon where you live in New Jersey, we're going to find more or less rental housing. So places like in Essex County, 55% of the residents are renters. In Hudson County, it's 68% that are renters. Statewide, we're talking about a little more than a third, or 36% of New Jerseyans are renters. So the cost of rental housing is important to a lot of people here in the state. It's especially important for people that are very low income, making less, for a family of four, making less than $33,000 a year. For people who are earning that low income, even though they might be working full time, 3/4 of them are paying over half of their income for housing. That's unsustainable, and it's what leads to the high rate of homelessness here in New Jersey. And it is something that is critical for our state, federal, and local government to address. And we hope this report gives the data that's necessary to make those policy changes to make our state more affordable, especially for people of low incomes. Thank you.
So New Jersey is becoming less and less affordable, and that directly dictates the network's budget advocacy on behalf of our membership, who work directly with communities to stabilize housing, protect renters, and to prevent homelessness. So in the fiscal year 25 budget advocacy, our main goals are to protect and grow the Affordable Housing Trust Fund. That will allow us to build more affordable homes and to promote first-time and first-generation homeownership. With New Jersey's fourth round of Mount Laurel beginning in 2025, and with a statewide affordable home deficit of more than 200,000, according to the National Low-Income Housing Coalition, New Jersey must expand the percentage of the realty transfer fee that is used to fund the Affordable Housing Trust Fund. This would make it more progressive, and it would allow it to collect more revenue from the sale of very expensive homes. And this revenue could also be used to support first-time and first-generation homeownership opportunities, to help address our worst in the nation racial wealth gap, a direct result of the racial gaps in homeownership. Protecting renters is essential. The rent is too high. We are seeing communities across the state take it upon themselves to craft rent control laws with no guidance from the state. So in the absence of that, we are advocating for the enactment of a luxury landlord corporate tax that would stabilize rents. This would be a fee on for-profit luxury developments that could be forgiven or refunded if the landlord provides affordable units through inclusionary zoning and keeps rent increases at a reasonable rate. And then finally, make it a little harder for evictions to occur. Make evictors pay. Increase the eviction filing fee as a disincentive revenue raiser for eviction prevention funding. The other key part of our budget advocacy, also directly guided by research like the National Low-Income Housing Coalition's Out of Reach report, is doubling a wildly successful tax credit program in New Jersey, the Neighborhood Revitalization Tax Credit. This tax credit leverages $5 to $7 for every dollar invested. And the Neighborhood Revitalization Tax Credit program has become one of the most successful public-private programs furthering community development and neighborhood change in New Jersey. Currently, that tax credit is capped at $15 million out of the state's $56 billion budget. We are advocating to double this tax credit to $30 million so more communities can participate in this highly successful program that results in comprehensive visioning to produce affordable housing. Thank you to the National Low-Income Housing Coalition and all of their hard work on producing this key data in their annual Out of Reach report. As we look toward July 1st and a budget signed for fiscal year 2025, we look forward to using this research to continue advocating for more resources that protect renters, for more resources to finally put a major dent and put an end to our affordable home deficit in New Jersey, and more resources toward closing the racial wealth gap in the state. Thank you.